Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this month's October market update with Mike Ott. I'm Cindy Bishop with Cindy Bishop Worldwide, and I'm thrilled to introduce today's presenter. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of meeting Mike, he brings a wealth. He brings a wealth of experience as a former public school teacher and a seasoned mortgage expert with over, I don't know, 19, 20 years. I don't change this often enough. Mike combines education and expertise in a way that truly sets him apart. His clients and agents love working with him, which is no surprise. More than 95% of his business comes from referrals, a true testament to his outstanding service and reputation. Today, Mike will walk us through the latest market update, providing an in-depth look at interest rates, mortgage trends, and the current market landscape, as brought to only him in the most up-to-date current facts and figures information. So please join me in welcoming Mike Ott.
Hey, thank you, Cindy. Good afternoon, everybody. All right, October already. Kind of crazy. Cindy asked when we were hopping on if I'm delivering good news today, and I said, unfortunately not. And the reason is about the time you get the news that interest rates have dropped, the reality is the market's, done a 180 swing. So September 18th, we had the Fed meeting. They cut the federal funds rate 0.5%. And very typical when this stuff happens, the next day my phone rings and everybody's asking if mortgage rates are 0.5% lower. And that's not how it works. And we're going to look at the chart here in a second, but since the Fed rate cut, mortgage rates have done nothing but go up. Now, there's some interesting data out there. 9 out of the last 10 Fed decrease cycles, when they begin a decrease cycle, 9 out of the last 10 times mortgage rates go up. Right. And the short and sweet explanation there is the Fed doesn't control mortgage rates. They control the federal funds rate, which is a 24-hour interest rate, right? That's the rate that banks charge each other to lend money overnight. So you're talking about overnight versus a 30-year mortgage note, right? That's nowhere near apples to apples. So I'm not surprised by the increase in rates after a Fed rate cut. And you see our range here, remembering back to last month, we're probably up 3/8 to 0.5% in the range from where we were when we met last month. So conventional conforming 6 1/8 to 6 5/8. High balance always going to be a little bit higher, 6 3/4 to 7 1/4. Our Govy products, VA loan 5 3/4 to 6 1/4. FHA 6 to 6 1/2. Mortgage News Daily is a great site. It's free. They do a great job of tracking the national average across across the loan types. And that's a good thing to kind of tune into, where you don't have to, pay for any kind of special real estate or mortgage subscription or anything like that. They do a pretty good job of that. So let's look at the chart. If you're here for the first time, this is the mortgage-backed securities chart. If you're a regular, you've seen this now. I always include this, the green and red candlestick chart, because it's it's very telling, and it's when people talk about just give me the facts, right? Well, this data doesn't lie. The first thing in that first arrow, if you're looking far left where it says Fed meeting, that was back on September 18th. And you'll notice on that day, that was a down in red day. And remember, this is an inverse relationship to interest rates. So when the mortgage-backed securities coupon goes down in price, the interest rates offered to consumers go up, and vice versa, right? If the price is going up on the bond, then the interest rates offered to consumers are going down. So look how much red we've seen since that Fed meeting on September 18th. And we kind of went sideways for for a couple weeks thereafter. And October 4th, the bottom fell out with again, a hotter than expected BLS jobs report. And we'll get to the actual numbers here on the next slide. But as you can see, that was a complete sell-off with a higher number of jobs coming in than what was expected by the markets. Now, in the middle there, between BLS and today is the CPI, that's inflation data. Did you notice that was kind of like the market kind of shrugged that off. The damage was done as far as the charts go with the jobs report. Again, we had another kind of arguably sideways movement. And then we had retail sales came in hotter, and that's actually the larger, if I put my cursor there, you should see it. That's retail sales right there, came in hot. But again, when you dig into that stuff, and we've talked about this, people are spending beyond their means, and they're spending on credit. There's a limit to that, right? There's an end. And for people that overextend themselves, it's usually not a happy ending. We've talked about credit card defaults, auto loan defaults being up over the course of the year, and that's continuing. So this, the US consumer loves to spend, and that's indicative of the data we get on the reports. But there'll be a turning point at some point, right? There will be a thud for that consumer that's overextended themselves. And the amount, the proportion of it that's going on credit cards is staggering. And we know that even with the 0.5% decrease, credit card interest rates are still, a lot of them are between 20 and 30%. Now, yesterday, Monday, the bottom fell out, and there was zero economic news. Zip. That's just kind of that's one of those days where it's like, how do you explain that, Mike? And I'm like, and I don't have a good answer for you. Nothing really came out, but it came out more so this morning that we've got US debt fears. And when the country's spending too much and going into debt, what do? They offset and they issue treasuries, right? Well, treasuries are bonds, mortgage-backed securities are bonds. If you flood the market with an oversupply of bonds, right, that's what we're seeing in the here and now. And you see those little lock icons above those particular days. We already had a lock alert a little bit earlier today. You can see by the dipstick below the candle here that we did drop below this 200-day moving average. And that's not good, because if we close below that blue line on that 200-day moving average, right, the next stop is here as a level of resistance. And then, again, we just, hopefully we don't see that. Because again, we've already lost at least 0.5% rate from before the Fed meeting, to the consumer. Any questions on that? That's the hard truth, unfortunately. Oh, one other, I listened to the Mortgage Economist daily, and they give their kind of lock advice for us lenders. And there's a report out there. I wish I had time to grab it, but they look back at the past 3 years, and the first 3 weeks of October have been hellacious for bonds and mortgage-backed securities, if you look at the last 3 years. And then there's almost an immediate bounce back going into the month of November. Now, last year was a little bit that bled more because I remember talking rates of almost 8% with people at the beginning of November last year. So it'll be interesting to see what that trend might look like this year, because we've definitely had a very, very rough first 3 weeks in October. All right, so since we last met, we had the August PCE inflation report that came out on August 30th. Headline month over month rose 0.1%. 1%. Year-over-year inflation fell to 2.5 to 2.2. On the whole, good news, right? We want that PCE overall headline number to get closer to 2%, but it's not so much the headline number. The Fed wants the core PCE, which strips out food and energy. And that was up, that came in, a tiny bit better than what was expected, 0.1 versus 0.2. And year over year, but we rose from 2.6 to 2.7. So we went in the opposite direction. Now, if I remember correctly, you have to remember that there's more decimal places here and it rounds up. And I think that number was probably like 2.4, 2.45. So we're very close to having that just kind of stay the same. So again, no, the markets kind of took that report in stride. It was good to see the overall inflation number downwards. Now, when jobs week came around, there in early September, the August ADP employment report came in hotter than expected. And when we go back to the charts, that time frame, that's where we started to have a lot of these red days on the MBS chart. 143 jobs created, only 120,000 were expected. JOLTS is the job openings. Now that rose from 7.7 to 8 million. Yet the hiring rate fell from 3.5 to 3.3, lowest level since 2013. So you've got a little bit of contradictory data all within one report. I remember I've told you, for those, if anybody's new and those of you that have been here, when we talk about this JOLTS job openings, it's real tough data to put your hat on, because there, with the ability to work remote in a lot of these positions, there might be one position that's offered in, all 50 states. And that counts as a job opening 50 times. But the reality is it's one position. So the, job openings definitely post-COVID, with the ability to work remote, and a lot of companies still on a hybrid model, that's a little bit, it's hard to discern what's the real number, what's the truth there. All right, and then there's the the dagger, the BLS jobs report, hotter than expected, 254,000 when 140 was expected. Right, and that caused, initially thinking that it's a knee-jerk, it's an overreaction by the markets and a huge sell-off in mortgage bonds. But we've dropped further since. So we're not likely to see sentiment change until we get to see what the September and October jobs reports look like. CPI for September came out on the 10th. That's our other inflation report, increased by 0.3 month over month. That was above expectations, and decreased 0.1 to 2.4 year over year, a little higher than the estimates of 2.3. So not great news, but not awful. And again, we went back to the charts. That was kind of like a neutral day. The markets took that in stride. The core CPI rate, which strips out the food and energy, increased by 0.3, slightly hotter than the 0.2 that was expected. Increased 0.1. The overall year over year increased 0.1 to 3.3% year over year, and that was above the estimate of 3.2. And we'll look at that CPI, because you guys have heard me harping on the shelter costs making up such a large portion of this CPI, and there's a huge lag effect to rents. Real-time rents are much lower than the data that's getting because of this lag effects. And we've talked about motor vehicle insurance. It's really hard when insurance costs are, skyrocketing on us. And it's one of those portions of the economy and the consumer world that the Fed can't really touch by their rate movements. And then we got the next Fed meeting on the 6th and 7th. On the 7th, we'll have the decision at 2 o'clock. Markets still believe that the Fed will kind of stay the course that they laid out on September 18th. That the expectation is that they'll drop a 0.25% at this November meeting, and they'll drop another 0.25% at the December meeting, and be you know, down 1% on the federal funds rate to end the year. Obviously, that remains to be seen. A lot of the volatility in the market right now is the uncertainty on, hey, did this jobs report, is this just a 1 month anomaly? Or what, is this a trend where we're going to be beating this number or blowing it out of the water? I'd like to think that it's an anomaly. We'll probably see a large revision downwards. There have been revisions downwards on these numbers for the past year and a half. Remember, they missed the mark, and the 6 month total was like 800,000 they were off. And, so that's pretty close to 1 million when you think about it. So if these reports on the 6 month look back report were 800,000 higher than what the reality is, there's definitely something wrong with the modeling that they use to get these numbers. So, well, we just have to wait and see. And the Fed's going to wait and see as well. November 1st, I believe, is the next jobs report, so that will be out before the Fed meeting. So, if we get, we get a good report, meaning it misses expectations or lowers than expected, I think that's more a catalyst for the Fed to definitely do the 0.25%. But right now, a lot of the investors in the marketplace are nervous about whether they're even going to do the quarter, right? If jobs are that hot, right? The economy's not as cool or not cooling as what they thought based on the data presented before their last meeting. Do they change course and not raise, not lower, and just leave it? That's kind of the immediate fear right now and speculation. Any questions on that stuff? We'll look at the CPI chart. So we talked about shelter, right? That's a beast. Real time, real time rents are much lower, but again, the lag effects it's going to take. This, so you have rent, you have owner's equivalent rent, and then you have lodging away. Now, lodging away is down pretty steep, and there were times where this was up 16%, and that's Airbnb, hotels, right? Owner's equivalent rent is a survey that they do when they call homeowners, and they ask them what they think they could rent their home for. Immediately, it's flawed, right? You're asking, your average homeowner who's doesn't work in the real estate industry, may or may not have a finger on the pulse of their local market, in particular what houses like theirs would rent for, and they could just throw out any number. So that, that's a tough one to swallow. But again, we're seeing these numbers finally trend down. Motor vehicle insurance, when you look at everything core, I mean, it's tiny. What the Fed did on their rate increase cycle, it worked, right? These numbers in shelter, we do expect to continue to come down. But when you look far right on this year effect, right? You've got core at 3.3, right? Well, 2.22 and 0.6, you almost have 3% of the 3.3, right? As making up just from those two categories. And one the Fed can't touch with whether they lower rates or raise rates. So it'll be interesting to see. I think we're going to see some of these higher rent numbers get replaced. But again, the lag effects are just longer, and they're not keeping up with real time. In the Fed minutes from the last meeting, they finally acknowledged, and he may have even acknowledged this in the press conference on the 18th, where the Fed, it's on their radar. They know that real-time rents are not this high right now. So the Fed also has an expectation that these numbers are going to cool down. And again, that's going to help these overall inflation numbers and get closer to the Fed's target of 2%. All right, any questions on that? All right, local real estate, for those of us in the Northern Virginia region, median price was $725. That's up 11.5, 11.5% year over year. Total sales up 4.6, year over year number. Prince William area was 546,250, up 3.2%. Year over year total sales 4.6. Dulles, these are the August numbers. Their reports always come out late. Median price 740,000, up 8% year over year. Total sales were flat on a year over year number, but up, year over year, up 8% on that price. Again, with this, we continue to see this month after month, that values aren't dropping, right? We might be going into the slower period. Interest rates just ticked up. You're going to have less people putting the homes on the market this time of year. You've got the holidays coming up. We know we're going into, traditionally a slower period of real estate. But what's behind this is the supply and the demand, and for us in housing, the lack of supply. The lack of supply, even though we might see a slow down in sales and pace of the market at this time of the year, we're going to continue to see values hold, because there are still way more buyers than there are available homes, and there is still, multiple offers in a lot of areas. But we're also starting to see, and it's a shift in the time of the year as well. We are starting to see homes sit a little bit longer. We're starting to see seller concessions to the buyer. And arguably kind of more normal, immediate kind of here and now market. But we shall see. Lending information. In the last few months, we've talked about some of the Virginia housing things and Spark for first-time home buyers. This is a little bit outside of the box and a little bit different and really not readily available. We at First Heritage just got this one-time closed construction to permanent financing. Now, if you know anything about construction to perm, and somebody's going to buy the land, where you're taking the cost of the land, the cost of the build, right, adding that together, and then usually the requirement is 20% down on that total number. So to be able to do a conventional Fannie Mae loan, where you buy the land, right, land acquisition and cost to build, and be able to only put 5% down, that's kind of a game changer, right? Now, because it is only 5% down, it is a Fannie Mae conventional product. Private mortgage insurance will be required. This is only for owner-occupied primary residence and one unit only. And right now, maximum loan amount only goes up to the national conforming limit of $766,550. It can be unimproved land only. There's a 10-acre maximum, and it must be zone residential. During the construction phase, and you can do this in two time orientations. You can do a 9-month build period or a 12-month. With the, sometimes we're probably going to see more people doing the 12-month construction, and to have that flexibility of the longer time frame, because we know sometimes things get back ordered. Mother Nature can play a role. We're going into the winter season in a lot of places. So 12-month is probably going to be the more dominant term. But in that initial build period, the client, the borrower only makes interest-only payments during that construction phase. Once the construction is done, it flips back to principal and interest over the remaining term of the loan. This is no non-occupant borrowers, right? You can't have co-signers on this. And I always get this question from, people that are in the construction world: can I build my own home and do this program? And the answer is no. You can't, no self-builds for this. But a unique product nonetheless, right? When you think that every other construction to perm loan is probably a 20% down minimum, this 5% down is definitely a unique product in the marketplace. Any questions on that? That's my hot lending topic. not so good news on lending stuff. The Federal Home Loan Bank first time home buyer incentive money for us has run out. I know it's running out, for a lot of lenders, and that's that time of year where that begins to get depleted. And remember, that money gets unleashed in February. They did do a second installment this year, but they were a much smaller pool of money, and it goes quickly. But that's, if you've got first time buyers counting on that, or looking into that product, we're starting now to kind of look, okay, well, hey, what can you do on the Virginia Housing Grant, or could you look at their Plus program as an alternative if that money's gone? All right, it's that time of year again. I've resurrected my little grid here because I have seen, I have buyer clients who have to sell a house, and believe it or not, some of them got an offer accepted with a home sale contingency. And I've got one buyer client, but they've got the house to sell, and they're at a price point of 800,000, and right now it's crickets. They can't even get people in to look at the property. Now, that's time of year. I think a lot of it too, and you guys can feel free to share with me what you're hearing out there on the street, but I hear a lot of, to me, it's flawed thinking. But a lot of people are talking about, well, I'm going to wait for the election results, right? I'm going to wait for the election. When it comes to making housing decisions, me personally, I don't fully understand that logic, because all of this stuff is more grounded in supply and demand, market conditions, the fundamentals and the technicals of the marketplace, mortgage-backed securities, the 10-year treasury note, right? And the overall economy and the jobs market. Might we see a little blip or volatility around election results and around the time of the election? Yes. Once the dust settles on that stuff, it's back to market fundamentals anyway. But I include this just to show, kind of paint you a picture of, and think of this, put your listing agent shoes on, right? And you're working for the sellers. I see a lot of sellers right now, the market's telling them right now they're overpriced. All the agents are taking their clients through the house, right? And they're saying, oh, it's priced right, it's priced right. It's priced right based off recent comps. But the reality is buyers right now, they know interest rates just ticked up a little bit. They have that logic and that thinking of, well, I'm going to wait till election's over. And you've got more of this wait and see. But I always include, I think this is a good time of year to kind of include this. If you're working with a seller and you've got a listing that's kind of stuck, remember, an agent's first thing is to start slashing at price. And what this grid shows you is the sellers at 869 on the far left. They, this is usually the column just in from the left there at 849. Usually what they do is they reduce price. This $20,000 reduction in price does very little in payment difference here, from 6,300 a month to 6,185, right? That doesn't really help the buyer out, but $20,000 in a seller credit offered to the buyer to maybe do a 2-1 buy down, where you buy that 7.5 rate down to 5.5 for the first year. Now we're talking about solving the affordability pinch, right? Because now you got $1,100 reduction from the highest payment that back here on the far left. Maybe they do a permanent rate buy down, and they end up somewhere in the middle. And again, these aren't necessarily the rates today. I want you to walk away with the concept of, if you have a listing that's struggling and you think overprice is the problem, before you start slashing at price, talk to your lender, call me. We can talk about how to market the place again, and have those conversations with your sellers about, look, if you have a mindset of, well, we'll just reduce price and we'll get more traffic, why don't you try this first? Offer the credit so that you can incentivize and improve the buyer's affordability experience in looking at that house and getting them more affordable piece of money to borrow versus just cutting at the price. So I throw that in there just as kind of a reminder. And then if you're on the buyer side, we've looked at this one before, but I think it's worth revisiting. I'm gonna sit the buyer that sits on the sidelines. Nope, interest rates, went up 0.5%, right? And they go back to the sidelines. Well, remember, due to the lack of inventory, that price of a home is going to continue to go up in value. They're continually going to be chasing this, even in the hopes. And if rates do drop, right, they're still going to be behind. They're still going to spend more money by waiting. Cost of waiting, you have $500,000 purchase at arguably a 7% rate over there on the left, right? And the buyer says, nope, I'm out. I'm going to wait a year. And yeah, maybe rates are down 1% to 6% in a year, right? But now that $500,000 house that same house is $550,000. Well, I'm going to wait another year. 2 years go by. Yeah, maybe you get the drop in interest rates that you were hoping for. But now the $500,000 house now, and 2 years from now, the sticker price is $600,000. Yes, you waited and you got your lower rate, but when you look at the payments, look at the payments on this. Right? There's no advantage. Look at the cash to close. Right? The price of the home is going to go up. You are going to pay more regardless of regardless of a reduction in interest rates, because the market, home values are going to, likely to continue to go upwards, right? As we've seen for months and months now, even at higher rates than what we're seeing today. So cost of waiting, and then, don't be so quick to slash the price when you on your listing. There might be an intermediate strategy to try and market the place, and see if you can pull some buyers in with maybe a seller credit to help buy down the rate. All right, guys. That's the October update. Any questions, comments?
I sent you a little text to talk about the FHA class tomorrow.
In the chat?
No, in your cell phone.
Oh, well,
But that's it. Just give it a plug, because a lot of people don't understand the value of it. And
yeah,
it's free without credit.
right. Tomorrow we're doing the 203K FHA 203K renovation class. It's it's going to give you a good overview of what it is. How it's a good program that can be used used effectively in any market. And we're going to kind of give you the ins and outs and the overview of that and kind of how it works. And it's again, if any of you are courting buyers that are, going into homes, let's say, regardless of price point, but the dated homes, homes that are in needed of some remodeling or updated kitchen or bath, this is a good loan product to purchase the home and get things remodeled to the buyer's liking, all in one transaction. So yeah, you can join us tomorrow morning. We're Cindy, 9:30 to 11:30, right?
That's exactly right. And it's up it'll be right in the feed when you open up cindybishopworldwide.com to upcoming events. And again, it's free without credit, and it's a great class. It's one of my favorite things because I used it a lot when I was active in real estate. Well, thanks, Mike.
Hey, you're very welcome.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yes.